Over the following year, the messengers started to come back, and each and every one had incredible stories about the places that he'd been, the things that they'd seen, the encounters they'd had. But although the stories were good, none of them mentioned Olwen. And when the last messenger had come back and told his story and finished, Culhwch got to his feet and started to walk towards the door, and Arthur said, "Where are you going?" And Culhwch turned and said, "Everyone else who has come to this court has been given the thing he asked for, except me. So I'm going from this place now, and everywhere I go I will bring shame and disgrace on your head." He turned and he walked straight into Kai, Arthur's greatest warrior, who stopped him and said, "I have a better idea. You and I, we will go through the great wide world together until eventually we either find this Olwen of yours or you admit that she does not exist." Arthur smiled and said, "A quest! Everybody loves a quest. Now, if you're going on a quest, young Culhwch, you need some noble and swift and skilled companions. Galwodd Arthur ar Kai." Kai was called to join them, and Kai was Arthur's greatest warrior. He was so strong he could make himself as tall as any tree. He had heat in his body that was so strong that on a snowy night he just had to sit down and all around him the snow would melt. He could take a piece of iron in his hand down into the water where he could hold his breath for 9 days and 9 nights. And when he came back 9 days and 9 nights later, for a hand's breadth above and below where he held that iron, it would be bone dry because of the heat of his body. The heat of his body was so great that on cold and miserable nights his companions would huddle around him for warmth. Galwodd Arthur ar Bedwyr. Bedwyr was another great warrior. He only had one hand, but with that one hand he could wound and kill more quickly than 3 men could with both hands free. Galwodd Arthur ar Culhwch Cyfarwydd. Culhwch Cyfarwydd was a tracker who could find you a path to go wherever you wanted in the world, even places that he himself had never been. Galwodd Arthur ar Culhwch Gwalstadieithoedd. Culhwch Gwalstadieithoedd could speak every language in the world, including the languages of the animals. Galwodd Arthur ar Gwalchmai fab Gwiar. Gwalchmai had never been on a quest without coming back with the thing that he'd gone to get. And finally, Arthur called Menw fab Tergwaith, a magician who could use magic and protect them from enchantment. And the very next day, the 7 of them, off they rode. They rode and they rode and they rode further than any of them had ever been before, until they came to this strange place. Desolate, featureless plain. Nothing to be seen in any direction. No buildings, no bushes, no trees, nothing, just flatness. And they rode and they rode and they rode for day after day after day, seeing nothing, seeing nobody. Until eventually, many days later, and they couldn't have told you how many days it was, on the horizon they saw a castle. Even though it was on the horizon, they could tell it was big. They were getting somewhere. The following morning they rose early. They rode hard. But by the end of the day, when the sun went down, they seemed to be still no closer to that strange castle. And the second day they rode. They rode and they rode, and still the castle stayed on the horizon. They didn't get any closer. But on the third day, things changed. On the third day, the desolate plain around them started to turn into a hilly landscape, with green hills and pasture and many, many sheep dotted around. And now they could see just how big this castle was. It blotted out half the sky. Just off to one side, sitting on a rock, there was a shepherd, a big man. A big man wearing a sheepskin jacket made of sheepskins, fleeces roughly sewn together, a big wide leather belt. He was sitting on a rock, and beside him, the crook in his hand, and on the other side a huge dog, massive beast, big red burning eyes, curving yellow teeth, and between its jaws, long trails of dribble made its way down to the floor, and where the saliva splashed on the ground, it burnt and sizzled and scorched the earth. So the 7 of them, together, very much together, made their way towards the big man. "Don't worry," said the shepherd. "I will not harm you. The only one can harm me is safe at home, my wife." Shepherd," said Culhwch, "can you tell us, who owns the castle?" "The castle?" "Yes," says Kai, "the big one." "Oh, the big one. Well, let me tell you, little men," said the big shepherd. "If I were you, I'd go home, because I know who lives in there, and the name of the giant who lives in there is Ysbyddaden. If you have any sense, you'll go home now, because everyone else has stayed has been killed. Now, good day." He gets to his feet. He starts to go, but Culhwch steps out of the group and says to the big shepherd, "Please tell me, what is your name?" "My name, little man, is Custennin." "Custennin, I have a gift for you." And he took the ring off his finger. This was a ring that his mother had given him when he was fostered. And he gave it to the big man. Of course, his fingers were all far too big to take the ring. So he took the glove that was folded over his belt, put it in there, put the glove back, turned on his heel, and without another word, off he went. They watched the man and the dog disappear. And everyone turned to Culhwch and said, "What do we do now?" And Culhwch said, "I don't know why, but I feel that man has the answer to what we're looking for. Let's let him go home, and we will arrive shortly after he gets there." And that's what happened. The big man, Custennin, he arrived home. He opened the door, he went inside, his wife was at work by the table, and he just threw his gloves on the table, and she noticed the ring roll out right in front of her. She picked it up, she recognized it now. She recognized this ring because she had seen one very like it before. You see, this woman, the wife of the big shepherd, was also a sister to Gwenhwyvar, and another sister to Culhwch's mother, Goleiddydd. So she recognized the ring. And she said to her husband, "Tell me, where did you get this?" "Well, it's a bit of a story," he says. "On my way back home, I went down to the shore because I remember how much you like to eat mussels fresh from the sea. And I was going to gather some, but you know what? I didn't find any mussels or shellfish. I found a dead man, washed up. I gave him a kick, and yes, he was dead. I noticed the ring. I brought it for you. I hope you like it." "Please stop playing your games with me," said his wife. "Please tell me that you did not get this ring off the finger of any dead man." "Oh, you don't believe me, woman," he says. "Well, look out the window." She looked out the window, and who did she see but Culhwch and his companions coming down the road. She recognized him straight away, not because she'd seen him before, because she never had, because his face was just like his sister's face. She rushed outside, her heart full of emotion, and she started to run towards them. Her feet pounded the ground. It lifted dust from the floor. She was huge, running towards them with her great arms outstretched, and they watched her coming with her great arms outstretched. Now, they were warriors from the court of King Arthur, and running away wasn't really what they were meant to do, but they didn't seem to have a choice. Kai, braver and quicker than the others, noticed a woodpile. In the middle of the woodpile, an enormous tree. He picked up this entire tree and he placed it between himself and the woman. So when she arrived to hug them, she didn't hug them. She hugged the tree. And she hugged and she hugged and she hugged and she hugged until she had no hug left. And that huge tree had been rendered into a little bent, broken twig. And Kai, the greatest of Arthur's warriors, said, "If it had been me in your hug, woman, it would have been my last." "Well, here you are," she says. "Come inside." So they all went inside and they all sat down. They sat at the table and soup and bread and cheese was served, and they started to eat. They were starving. And as Custennin, the big shepherd, came to sit down and take his place, he flicked open the latch on a big wooden chest, and out came a boy out of the box, 12 years old. And he came and sat down with the others and ravenously ate his soup. And Kai, the great warrior, said, "What a sin is this? To keep a young lad like that locked up in a box. What is going on here?" "Well," said the shepherd, "shows how much you understand. This boy you see here, the one that got out the box, he is our only son, but not our first. Me and my wife, we had 23 before him. 23 others. Every single one killed by the giant on the hill. So that's why we keep him in the box. It's the only safe place for him. There's a safer, said Kai. When he's finished eating, do not put him in the box. He will stay by my side, and I will teach him the way of the warrior. And so it was agreed. They ate, they chatted, they talked, until eventually Castellan's wife turned to Culhwch and said, "Why are you here? You are in great danger. This must be the most dangerous place in the world. I'm sure you have encountered many difficulties and obstacles, so just go home, tell those stories, and everyone will be satisfied. If you stay here, you will die. You are in great danger." And Culhwch said, "You don't understand. It is not my choice to do this or be here. It is my fate." "I see," she said. "So tell me, what are you trying to do?" "I need to go to the great fortress of Ysbyddaden in Bencawr, face him, and I need to marry Olwen, his daughter. In which case you will surely die." "But listen," said Culhwch, "I've been thinking. I understand that going into the castle is dangerous. Is there no way that I can see Olwen without going into the castle?" And the woman smiled and said, "Of course. She's coming here tomorrow. You see, I brought her up. I was her nursemaid. And even though she's a young woman now, I am the one she asks to wash her hair every week. And she's coming here tomorrow, but remember, I have made a solemn promise that for as long as she is in my care, no harm will come to her." And Culhwch remembered the great tree that she had crushed into a twig and nodded. They slept fitfully that night. Culhwch woke up early. The door opened and he blinked and he thought it was the sun streaming in from outside, but it wasn't. It was Olwen. In she came. Her hair shone as yellow as the gorse flowers when the sun is shining on them. Her cheeks were as red as the foxglove. The movement of the swan was in the way she walked. She walked towards him, a golden torque glinting around her throat, a long red cloak going all the way down to the floor. But the most astonishing thing about her was her eyes. Her eyes were as bright and as fearless as the new flown hawk. And Culhwch said to her, "Olwen, come with me." And she said, "I cannot. I cannot. If you want me, you must go to my father, you must face him. He will give you a list of impossible tasks. But don't worry, although they sound impossible, I will make sure that for you, they are easy." And then Castellan's wife took Olwen through a door, the door shut.